Hey everyone, welcome. It's Carlo, discoveryourcenter.com, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about breathing from the core, how we begin to build core strength. So I went through a training with Hope Savara at Core Functional Fitness, and I really learned so much during that time about how in my entire lifetime, and even through most of my yoga teacher training, I had not been really activating the proper muscles to stabilize so that I could get more mobility in the body, meaning more flexibility and just movement without pain. Your yoga should always help you and never hurt you. And I have an extra vertebrae in my back. I've had some other issues in the body, and yoga has been so beneficial for me. But yet there were still times that I was finding I wasn't able to move forward in my practice as I wanted to, or I was feeling some tension in the back. And since I've begun to take some of the philosophy of core functional fitness into my own yoga practice and all movement on and off the mat, I've felt significant benefits. And even just beyond physical things began to shift. My cycle began to shift. My energy began to shift. Because when we think about this core center here, there's so much more going on than just the physical muscles, right? There's just layers and layers. We have our digestive system, an elimination system, an endocrine system. So it's a very important part of our body. And it's also how we stabilize what we do. So I want to talk you through that. Whenever we, before we have any movement in the body, we want to first stabilize. And what that involves is the muscles of the pelvic floor and the deep transversus. The deep transversus muscle is behind this front layer that we often call the six-pack abs, right? It's a muscle that runs right in front of the spine. And when we contract that muscle, we want to feel like it's hugging into the spine and getting us strong. So there's no sucking in sensation, but we feel the deep sensation from within that's stabilizing and hugging in. Now the pelvic floor is key to understanding. The pelvic floor is holding up our organs all the time, every time we stand and everything we do. So we need to really understand the importance of strengthening these muscles. And if you've ever had a pregnancy or birth, these muscles have been affected, and we're often not taught how to bring them back into their full movement. So when we contract, we're thinking about contracting around the anus, then the vaginal passageway, and then the urethra. And we do that in that order, and we do it in the beginning. Sometimes you may not sense what those muscles are doing, but you want to begin to visualize it and begin to understand what those muscles are and what they're doing, and then how they co-contract with the deep transversus muscle. And this is how we're going to stabilize. So one of the best ways that I teach this in my classes is to lie on my back. So go ahead, lie on your back if you can now. Feet are going to be on the floor. They're about hip distance apart. So the bony parts in the front, these are your ASIS joints, and you just want to feel where they are, and your feet are lined up. Or you can feel your sit bones, and you're going to feel the feet line up there. Hands are going to be on the ground. They're not going to be touching the ankles or heels. If they are, that's too close. Just push them away a little bit. So on the inhale, I'm just going to naturally feel my navel rise up a little bit. On the exhale, the navel draws toward the spine. I'm not sucking in or making anything happen. It's just the natural movement with the breath. So inhale and exhale. Turning all muscles off, because we often are holding on to certain muscles in the body. So inhale again. This time on the exhale, begin to contract the muscles around the anus. And inhale, release. This time, contract on the exhale the muscles around the anus and then the vaginal passageway without lifting your bum up. And on the inhale, release. Now this time on the exhale, we're going to contract around the anus, the vaginal passageway, and the urethra. And the inhale, release. And this may be what you practice for several days or weeks until you get the hang of that. And then we're going to add the deep transversus muscle, then we're going to move into a pelvic tilt. So this time on the inhale, and turn everything off. And on the exhale, we're going to contract the anus, the vaginal passageway, and the urethra. The deep transversus muscle hugs into the spine as well. And inhale, release. Now I'm going to walk you through a pelvic tilt. And normally when we've been taught pelvic tilts in the past, maybe in a fitness or exercise class or even yoga, we tilt and we squeeze the glutes together and we lift everything off the mat. We're not going to do that here. What we want to do is just really work with that deep contraction and allowing the muscle to move the tailbone toward the pubis bone on the exhale, and on the inhale, the pubis bone is going to move back toward the tailbone. We feel that little natural arch right there. Okay. So everything is soft, everything is released. Take a nice inhale. As you exhale, contracting through the muscles of the pelvic floor, the anus, vaginal passageway, urethra, deep transversus, we're going to move the tail toward the pubis bone. And inhale, release. Resisting any urge to squeeze those glute muscles, resisting any urge to squeeze through the front, inner thigh or psoas, and just keep going with that breath. The inhale and the exhale, feeling everything move. So this is going to feel pretty subtle in the beginning, and it should, and you want to work with that for a while and just get the hang of that. If you have any low back pain, this is going to be so beneficial for it. And again. Good. So roll over to your side, press on up. So that pelvic tilt is going to be very beneficial just in understanding all movement. Another practice that you can take is just putting the hands at the sides of the waist and breathing into the sides of the belly. So when we come into breathing practices in yoga, so if you've practiced yoga before, you may have learned the belly breath, which I often teach as well. When we start into our movement though, we want to be thinking about how to expand, almost 360, but really through the ribs, and keep that core contraction containment, the muscles of the pelvic floor and the deep transversus. So your hands can come right by your side. We're going to take an inhale and an exhale. All right. Start to notice what's moving on your inhale and exhale. And then I want you to think about inhaling and allowing those hands to move out. And the exhale, letting them soften in. Inhale. Exhale. You can feel that deep transversus muscle hugging into the spine. Work with this breath. Work with it as often as you can to really get the sense of it. Everything is connected in the body, okay? Everything is connected in the body. We have more than, I think, something like 40 some muscles that move through the pelvic floor. And we need those muscles to start engaging and supporting us. This is going to be key for low back health. It's going to be key for your movement. Because the muscles of the pelvic floor and deep transversus were designed to stabilize us. And from there we begin to move our bodies. But most of us have started to use our mobilizing muscles to stabilize us. So maybe the glute muscles. For me, when I began some of these exercises, I started to notice, wow, how often I was squeezing in the middle and upper glutes just to hold myself. And I think it was for many years of back pain, just a protection, sort of a protection mechanism in my body. But once I started turning that off and really developed these muscles and began to retrain how I stabilized and how I moved my body, it was so beneficial for all of my practice. So I want you to really get that understanding, practice that this week, and then you could explore some other movement practices in this series. Namaste.